Greetings everyone. In this video, I'll be discussing the topic of the narcissistic personality and how those individuals will tend to use particular tactics or mechanisms to maintain control over or to manipulate others in relationships. I'll also be going a little bit deeper into the understanding of that personality type and looking into an energetic perspective where the narcissistic personality is kind of an overlap of what is referred to as the psychopathic personality type or psychopathic defensive style of personalities. So to begin, we'll just consider what the topic of a narcissistic personality is referring to. When people use the word narcissist, they think of a person who's very self-centered, at least someone who appears on the surface to be concerned primarily with their own desires and needs without much concern for the well-being or the concerns or needs of others. Now, in a relationship, in order for someone to play out that pattern, they would need the other person to in some way go along with or accept being treated in that manner. In order to facilitate this, there are a couple of key mechanisms that are used. So first, the narcissistic abuser, in using these psychological tactics on their victims to maintain control, will often promote a sort of dependency. The abusers will convince their targets that they need and must depend upon the abuser, that the person can't live or survive without the abuser. When the victim believes this, then he or she feels powerless or helpless and accepts being attached to the abuser, truly believing that it would be impossible to survive independently. Another common tactic is to promote a sense of guilt in the victim. The abusers often apply what is referred to as gaslighting to convince the victims that they are the ones with psychological problems or are engaging in malicious actions that are causing harm to the narcissist. The abuser does not acknowledge his or her own behaviors as causing harm to others, but instead will try to play victim and blame others when they seek to defend themselves or escape from the abuser. As these tactics are played out, it's helpful to consider that the narcissist may actually believe what they're trying to convince their victim to believe. So they may actually believe that they're always the one in the right and the other person is the one in the wrong, that they are good and the other person is bad, that they are the one being mistreated, not the other way around. So it's really hard to have a logical, rational conversation with that abusive person. They can't really see things in a clear, objective way. The tactics that this narcissistic abuser is using are designed to maintain control and keep the victim from breaking free of the abusive relationship. The abuser actually deeply fears being abandoned or betrayed and left alone to face his or her own pain and darkness. Typically, the narcissist experienced some major rejection or abandonment at an early age of their development, an early stage, you could say, of their childhood, and consequently they failed to have healthy attachments or bonding with other people. This led to lack of empathy and preoccupation with control in future relationships. The defensive mechanism to deal with that fear of abandonment and the anger over the pain it caused is to attach energetic cords to another person and keep them from leaving while projecting and inflicting pain onto them. The narcissist is often playing this out unconsciously, not realizing how it relates to their own early emotional trauma and abandonment and betrayal issues. As long as narcissistic abusers have a dependent victim available, they can avoid dealing with their own core emotional wounds, and they'll continue to play out the pathological drama fostered by their defense mechanisms. To facilitate healing for a narcissist who truly desires help, and we'll keep in mind that it's somewhat unusual for the narcissist to actually acknowledge that they have a problem and seek help. It is vital for a healing professional to guide the narcissist to face the core emotional pain and access spiritual resources to address the issue at its source. It's also important to cut the cords in the abusive relationships so that there isn't someone present playing the dependent victim role for the narcissist. By staying in the relationship with an unhealed narcissist, you aren't actually helping nurture or heal them. You are enabling their pathology and postponing the potential for healing both for yourself and the other person. In a sense, they need you to break free and abandon them so that they will have a new opportunity to face their own core abandonment or betrayal issues and to heal it rather than reinforce it. Whether they are ready to pursue the path of healing rather than reinforcing their own wound is up to them. You can't rescue them from their darkness. You can only, in a sense, rescue or uplift yourself as you address your own core self-worth issues that led you to stay in that relationship. So it's important to realize this, that it's not your job to fix the other person, to help them heal from their darkness. In many abusive relationships, the person playing this dependent or victim role has a lot of empathy, a lot of desire to care for and nurture others. And they see this person who has this darkness there as someone who's in need of nurturing, in need of healing. However, in the relationship, you can't really resolve their issue by attempting to heal and nurture them. You're just allowing them usually to continue to manipulate you. So ultimately, they have to get to the root of their issue for healing. You can't compensate in this relationship for what happened in their relationship with their parent. You aren't their parent, you're in theory their partner. It's a different type of relationship. So they have to work on their own on a spiritual level to address whatever abandonment or betrayal, whatever wound to their ego self they may have experienced with their relationship with their parent. Now, I've talked somewhat here about this concept of the narcissist and how they play out that role in a relationship. I would like now to go a little more into the metaphysical and energetic level of understanding things, and I'll be referring to the Barbara Brennan healing system, the Barbara Brennan healing science. Barbara Brennan is a world-renowned energy healer, and in her work she deals a lot with psychology and with the personality defense mechanisms that are prevalent throughout the population. There are some core personality types that she identifies in her work, and one of them is the psychopathic personality type. I'm going to go through this type now and look at some of the key elements of it. This comes from Barbara Brennan's book, Light Emerging. It's her second book. She has 3 books published which look at energy healing in this in-depth way. For the psychopathic personality character structure, from this perspective, the main issue that they're dealing with is betrayal. So if you think about a person who's been abandoned or neglected in some way, that is a form of betrayal, since as a child we would expect our parent to be there to support and nurture us, to instill some sense of security and safety, as well as positive self-worth. So if a parent is in some way betraying our need for those things, then we're going to feel in some way painful or some wound from that. The primary fear associated with this personality structure is the fear of letting go and trusting. Since this person expected to receive that positive treatment from a parental figure and they didn't receive it, they were betrayed, they now don't trust close people in their life, or they don't trust the universe and the creator to provide what they need for their own emotional well-being. What they experienced, according to this model, is that they were used and betrayed. So instead of the parent providing a positive role as the parent in some way mistreated them or betrayed them. Their defensive action is to control others. So by controlling others, they're trying to compensate for that betrayal. They feel if they can be the one who's in control, then they're protecting themselves from being betrayed again. However, paradoxically, the result of this defensive action is that they start to act in an aggressive manner, and this leads to betrayal drawn to the self. In other words, eventually, the people that they're controlling or trying to manipulate will end up betraying them. So by trying to protect themselves from betrayal, they're actually helping foster another betrayal. The relationship to their core essence, you could say the core spiritual essence, is they're afraid that their own essence is bad or evil. So this person actually fears facing the possibility that something within them is bad, rather than they're in their own minds the quote good one. Their human need here would be to trust others, to feel okay with making mistakes in life and knowing that they're still safe, they're okay. The spiritual need is to recognize and honor their core essence and the higher will of others. So to not have to be in control, to not feel that they need to have control or power over other people, but to allow other people to be who they are and to choose their own desires, their own goals, their own path. Now, in this model, there's also a concept of time distortion. Different personality character structures tend to have different distortions of how they relate to this concept of time. And for this psychopathic personality defense, the person would tend to rush into the future. So that's kind of the basic overview of how that core energetic model looks at this narcissistic or psychopathic type of personality. Now I'm going to read some more in-depth discussion of this psychopathic character structure that's in the book Light Emerging by Barbara Brennan. According to this text, the main issue of the psychopathic defense, as I mentioned, is betrayal. Brennan says here, betrayal is the main issue for people who use the psychopathic character defense. They have probably experienced many lifetimes as warriors, standing up and fighting for a great cause. They sacrificed a lot on the personal level, fought and won their battles. They knew their cause was right, knew they were right, and knew they were good, which was why they were so good at winning. Now keep in mind, this is how they perceive things in their mind. It's not an objective assessment of who's good or right. And of course, Barbara Brennan's work includes the concept of reincarnation and the soul having many different lifetimes. So that's why she's saying that these individuals likely have other lifetimes where they played this warrior role. She continues here, the good cause made them good and the enemy bad. But in the end, these people were betrayed, overthrown, and probably killed by those they trusted most. Why? Because winning requires an adversary. If someone is right, then someone else is wrong. They are still good at winning. So this is this polarity idea where in order to be playing a role where you're right, where you feel you're good, there has to be someone else who you see as bad or wrong. And so if you carry that mindset, it will continue to play out in your relationships. And she brings up an example here where she says, running a country requires leadership of a different kind. It requires teamwork and cooperation, where everyone is good and a lot of people are right, not just the leader. So people with a psychopathic structure never made it across the boundary from warrior to king or queen. Psychopathic characters are still warriors trying to win a war that no longer exists. As a result, deep inside, they don't trust anyone anymore. Everyone is ultimately their enemy, even their closest associates. They see life as a battleground. Now, she mentioned the idea of a king or queen. Well, ideally, if there was a leader of that type, they would be a positive type of leader who does promote cooperation, who does seek a peaceful, harmonious society in their kingdom or queendom, if you will. But the reality in human civilization has often been that those who do reach that position, those leader roles, still have that battleground warrior mindset where it's all about betrayal where people are backstabbing one another, where people are fighting for power and control. So she's talking more about an ideal of those archetypes, not how people in the real world are actually performing in those positions. Next, Brennan discusses the family background of people with this psychopathic character structure. The family into which the psychopathic character chooses to be born becomes the next battleground. The people in it to whom they are closest become the next betrayers. They have experienced betrayal many times in life. They were betrayed at a very early age by one or both parents. In early childhood, winning was very important. Someone, usually a parent, had to be right and had to win. The person who won was proven to be good, and the person who lost was bad. So they see people in these kind of polar opposite dichotomies. Usually the parent of the opposite sex was having trouble with their spouse and transferred many of the needs that are supposed to be met by the spouse onto the child. That parent used seduction to control the child. The child became mommy's little man or daddy's beautiful young woman, and was subtly told how much better than the other parent he or she was. The parent of the same sex was bad and the child was good. The child was given responsibilities beyond his or her young age and encouraged to grow up fast. Such children gave their heart to the parent of the opposite sex, but sex was not in the picture. Now, of course, there are cases where there is some type of incest or molestation that occurs, but she's talking about, in most cases, sex wasn't actually part of that relationship between the child and parent. She continues here, of course, when their sexuality came forth in puberty, all hell broke loose. The parent of the opposite sex was terribly jealous of any suitors. The child wasn't supposed to have sexual feelings and was only supposed to love the parent. Today, this makes it very scary for people with a psychopathic defense to have both sexuality and heart. To have them both is to betray a parent, and they themselves are bad. They are very vulnerable in this area. They are afraid of people of the same sex who remind them of the same-sex parent. Of course, the true betrayal is from the parents, who used and controlled such children to fill the needs that they themselves were supposed to get from their spouse, with whom they couldn't resolve problems. So once again, people with psychopathic defenses fought for a cause, in that case as a child, for the good parent of the opposite sex against the, quote, bad parent of the same sex, and supposedly won, parentheses, the love of the good parent. Then, in the end, they were betrayed by the parent they fought for, because after all, the parent either stayed with the spouse or got a different one. So these people carry a lot of fear and see the world as a battleground in which they are forced to fight. They are afraid of betrayal from closest friends, so they are afraid of them. They fear collapse under the heavy load that they must carry. The defensive action the psychopathic character takes against fear. So how do they deal with this fear? And of course, this comes back to their controlling patterns. As a result of their fear, the defensive action of psychopathic characters is to pull up and out of their bodies in an effort to be bigger and grow up faster than normal in order to take on the responsibilities of an adult. This ungrounds them and makes them feel less safe. Their energy fields are much more charged on the upper half than on the lower half. To maintain this displacement, they also push energy to the back of the body to increase their willpower. Since the heartstrings to the parent of the opposite sex are tainted with betrayal, they will be afraid to connect their heart cords to another woman or man. So they won't get really, truly intimate with another person. They're more concerned with having control over the person. Since life is characterized by fighting for what is right, psychopathic characters also tend to meet life in an aggressive manner. Seeing the world as attacking them, they throw their energy to the will in the back of the body, then up the back and over the head at the supposed aggressor. So you notice they believe other people are attacking them, that they are being victimized by others. It is forceful and sharp, and it says, "You are the bad one." These defensive actions make the physical world feel even more unsafe to people who use the psychopathic defense. Actually, they are the aggressors and don't know it. So this is important to realize, that quite often the person who's acting abusively, who's being aggressive, they're kind of in an illusion and denial about it. They believe that the other people in their lives are the aggressors, that other people are attacking them. They don't see their own aggressiveness, their own abusiveness. Their aggressive behavior brings aggression back to them everywhere they turn. So of course, if they're attacking other people are likely to start fighting back. They must constantly fight and feel betrayed because they have fights with their closest friends. Their energy field is not grounded, and they cannot source the life force from earth energies, so they feel weak and unsupported. By displacing their energy upward, depleting their first and second chakras, these people make themselves more vulnerable to having the rug pulled out from under their feet, so to speak. They have trouble with sexuality because their second chakra is undercharged. They are seductive, but the seduction doesn't lead to long-term relationships because the heart and sexuality don't work together. When they do connect heartstrings, they are preset to betrayal. A man will expect a woman to betray him. A woman expects a man to betray her. And keep in mind, this could occur in homosexual relationships also, which tend to have one partner who's playing a more masculine role and the other a more feminine role, even though they happen to be the same gender. Brandon continues here, each person helps set the other up for his or her betrayal, or they do the betraying first. The more their life experience is brought back to consciousness, the more they are caught in the struggle to win, to prove they are good. They see the world as being either good or bad, and they are afraid that they perhaps are the bad ones. When they win, they are good. When they lose, it proves they are bad. Of course, I prove that within their own mind. Therefore, they always pick fights to win so they can feel good, and they see the world as trying to prove that they are bad. But they never really win because they are projecting the whole thing. So this is really all occurring within their own consciousness. They also take on more than they can handle, having been taught to do this at a very early age. They take a heavy burden, give up personal needs, charge forward, and then eventually find some betrayal that lets them collapse. They work long hours and take more responsibility than is healthy because it is a way to control others. They think they must control those around them in order to survive. Physiologically, they are usually healthy and will work until collapsing, possibly with a heart attack, depending on how entangled the heart cords become from the experiences of betrayal that they store in them. They may have back or joint problems from taking on heavy burdens. People who use the psychopathic defense rush forward in time. There's never enough time to do all that they need to do. They will not stop and be in the moment, but they live in a future that never comes. They experience their own essence as truth, and when aligned with a cause, they experience the unitive principle within that cause, but they do not experience or trust the divine individuality within others. These people erroneously think their life task is leading the fight for some great cause. Later we shall see that it is not. So it's not unusual to see people who are involved in some major movement, some major societal organization or group, especially if they're playing a leadership role, who are actually displaying these psychopathic personality characteristics. How to tell if someone is using a psychopathic defense. The best way to tell if someone is using a psychopathic defense is to notice whether they try to pick a fight with you and then prove you are wrong. You are not only wrong in their mind, of course, but there is an implication that you are really bad when you are wrong. They will also be very willing to help you with your problem. They themselves don't have a problem, in their mind, of course. If they did, in their mind, they would be bad. And bad is not just bad, it is evil. For example, if you are a healer, they will be very glad to let you work on them so that you can learn your work better. They will be glad to critique it when you are finished. So they like to find the faults in others, because by doing so it helps them feel good or better than others. The human and spiritual needs of people with a psychopathic defense. So she says, remember, all of the above is just a mask, and what's under it is extreme terror. People who use the psychopathic character defense need to be free of terror and to feel safe. They need to give up controlling others to feel safe. They need to learn to trust both themselves and others. They need to realize that Earth is not a battleground. Rather, it is a place to commune with others, a place where others reflect the self. They need to give up the fight and let down the burden. They need to stop rushing into the future and instead surrender to the divine expression of the universe, which is life on Earth as it is in the now. They need to surrender to imperfect humanness and find safety in that humanness. They need to let themselves make a mistake and still feel safe and good. In doing this, they can recognize the divine within others. Next, Brennan asks, what's your negative reaction to the psychopathic defense? Let's explore what your negative reaction might be when people defend in this way. Once again, we will explore the major different reactions people have to character defenses in terms of the energy flow modes of push, pull, stop, allow, and withdraw. Thus, when people are acting toward us in certain ways, how do we respond? And Barbara Brennan characterizes those responses using those terms. What do you do when you are interacting with someone and they pick an argument with you to prove that they are right and you are not only wrong but bad? Psychopathic characters do this by throwing their aggressive energy at you from over the top of their head. It hovers over you. Do you get angry and fight back by doing the same thing? If you do, they will escalate. They will get more aggressive, clever, and even vicious. Remember, their experience of this is like that of a cornered wild animal that is fighting for its life. The more you fight, the less they will trust you and the more afraid they will be. So they will fight harder to win. Do you react by feeling abandoned and grabbing onto the person? Do you go into pull? If you do, they will get more aggressive to push you away. What will you do then? Pull harder? Do you go into stop and stop your energy flow? If so, they will fight harder to reach you. When you go into stop, do you sink way down deep inside of yourself? If so, they are way up there hovering over you, and you are way in there. Do you feel safer in there? You are still under attack. Do you miss the contact when you do this? Or do you stay present while you are in stop and just wait, perhaps with an impatient demand for them to hurry up and shut up? They won't. Do you go into denial and allow? Do you simply allow what is happening, go into denial about it, and to continue to carry on a conversation as if the conversation or connection were really happening? Do you let the person win and feel bad about yourself? Does it hurt? Does this really help them? Did they really win? Or did they just prove once again that they were right? The universe is a battleground. Did you get your purpose accomplished? I doubt it. Or do you withdraw and leave your body so there is nobody there to take the blame? They might get more aggressive and yell, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Or, "Stop pretending you're afraid, I know what you are really feeling." So now let's see how you could respond in a healthier way. Brennan says how you could respond in a positive, healing way to the psychopathic defense. Remember, the purpose of the positive healing response to a defense is to help both of you get back to reality and communion as soon as possible. Psychopathic characters' defense will demand that you agree with their distorted view of the world. Don't agree with their defense because that only strengthens it. A primitive response is sometimes more difficult to do with people who use the psychopathic defense because they are so aggressive in asserting that they are right. However, if you get into an argument with such a person, you are in a sense also agreeing with their view of the world simply because you are arguing. In the book here, she has visual images of how a person could manage their response energetically. So I won't be able to show that for the moment. But she says, obviously, it is very difficult to respond immediately in a positive way when someone is attacking you. So after your first negative reaction, no matter what it is, take a deep breath and bend your knees. Remember, they see you as the aggressor who thinks they are bad. Any bioplasmic streamers coming their way right now will be experienced as an aggressive attack. ground down into the earth and pull back any bioplasmic streamers you may have sent out. Do this by becoming extremely passive and focusing your attention on yourself while still listening to the other person. You will probably have to break eye contact to do this. If they demand that you look at them, simply explain that you really want to hear what they have to say and you need to center yourself to do so. Move the energy in your field down into the earth, making the lower half of your field big with a wide base and the upper part of your field small. Do this by bringing your attention to your legs and a large area of ground behind you. Imagine it, feel it, and see it. Do not engage in a contest. Use the mantra, no contest, no contest. Of course, you're using that mantra internally. You're not stating that out loud to the other person. Imagine yourself and your auric field to be made of Teflon so that any aggressive energy coming at you just pours off. Become rose and green. So think of those colors, rose and green, to help you be more centered, more clear, and grounded. Tell yourself to listen for the seed kernel of truth in the exaggerated accusations. The exaggerations are really expressing the other person's fear, not your badness or what you did or didn't do, even though that's what the person's words may be saying. Do not argue about any points. Just be there and listen to the argument, letting the negative energy slide into the earth as it reaches your Teflon aura. Remember, these people are terrified of betrayal, in self-hatred, and in denial of it. Let them go on until they finish. Do and say things that will let them know that you will not betray them. For example, speak about how good they are, how you trust them, and how you like being with them and want to continue that. Ask them to tell you more about the situation they are talking about. Let them know that you are really interested in changing the situation and your part in it. Next, decrease the frequency of your field vibrations. In arguments, they get high, harsh, and jagged. Do this by concentrating on the earth and how good it feels beneath your feet supporting you. Or you might want to think of things that make you feel soft, calm, and secure, such as a walk you took recently through nature, your favorite music, or someone who makes you feel very safe. Imagine that person standing next to you. It could be your spiritual guide. Keep slowing and smoothing your frequency until you match the Earth's frequency and hold it there. Simply be there and allow your vibes to relate to the psychopathic character through harmonic induction. Soften your pulsations into a wave-like motion. Think of gently rocking in a boat on a calm lake on a sunny afternoon. But don't stop listening, being there for them and seeing their beautiful core. Look for it, recognize it, and acknowledge it. As they calm down and you feel safer, allow the earth vibrations that you are making to include more and more of your heart energy. Accept them as they are now. I'm going to stop or pause at this point with what Barbara Brennan has shared. Her goal is to help each person heal, and so she's guiding the person who's in an interaction with someone exhibiting a psychopathic character structure to learn to really be present there and to help support that person, that psychopathic character, in feeling more safe and having more trust. However, in most relationships, it's not realistic to continue to be in that relationship and attempt to play that healer or healing role. In relationships, we often have our own issues, our own insecurities, our own unresolved traumas that we're playing out. And so we need to work on those things individually for ourselves until we get to a point where we can be fully present, fully centered in our own being as we interact with the other person. So personally, I wouldn't recommend trying to stay in the relationship with that psychopathic or narcissistic character. There are some individuals who might be capable of doing so, continuing to be in that centered role, to play that part of helping facilitate healing on a spiritual level. But I believe it's more helpful usually for the person with that narcissistic or psychopathic pattern to have someone who's only the healer, someone who plays the healing role without being an intimate partner for them. It would be difficult for someone to be both of those roles. Inevitably in life this does occur. Someone is a partner and they're also playing that role of helping facilitate healing. But particularly in this case of someone who is a narcissist who tends to inflict pain on others, it's very hard for someone to stay in that relationship and promote healing rather than experiencing further pain or wounding. So she's presenting what you could do ideally, but keep in mind that often it's just not possible to continue to be present, to be in a relationship with that person. And you may need to, in actuality, play that betraying or abandoning role. You may have to just leave for your own safety and well-being, and that's okay. You're not obligated to try to help heal that other person. And it is okay for that person to experience another betrayal. Eventually, they will find opportunities to pursue their own healing, to understand their own pain, their own psychological or spiritual pathology. I hope that this information has given each of you some valuable insights into relationships that you've had or you've observed others having, even relationships that are occurring more on a societal or collective level. I appreciate each of you for taking your time to view this video. For those interested in spirituality, psychology, holistic healing, and related phenomena, I invite you to watch more of my videos and also to visit my website, phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I want to wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.